They build cars together, share steel, swap billions. But now they're trading blows. Trump hiked tariffs, Canada hit back, and the world's friendliest border just got colder. As supply chains groan and diplomacy stumbles, can decades of economic marriage survive one man's trade war? Canadian officials are maintaining a measured tone of confidence even as trade tensions with the United States reached new heights last week. On August 1st, the Trump administration raised tariffs on Canadian goods not covered by the existing trade agreement from 25% to 35%, marking another escalation in a months-long economic standoff between the two neighbours. Speaking on CBS's Face the Nation on August 3rd, Canada's Minister for US-Canada Trade Dominic LeBlanc struck a notably optimistic tone despite the setback.
So we were obviously disappointed by that decision. We believe there's a great deal of common ground between the United States and Canada in terms of building two strong economies that work well together. That's been the history of the 40-year free trade agreement that goes back to President Reagan.
The minister emphasised the unique nature of the relationship between the two countries, describing it in terms that highlight their economic integration.
One description without which I thought was very apt. We don't sell things to each other as much as we build things together. And that's why it's difficult in this relationship when so much is integrated. But we remain very optimistic.
LeBlanc had spent much of the previous week in Washington meeting with senior US officials, including Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and US Trade Representative Jameson Greer. Despite leaving without a concrete agreement, he characterized these discussions as productive. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney expressed optimism on August 3rd that negotiations with the US on trade would lead to something constructive.
Canada's strong. We can give ourselves far more than anyone can take away. We're building this great country. I just met with the Premier, building BC, building Canada, building in a Canadian way, building sustainably, building together, building positively, and that's what we're going to do. And yes, we'll come to something with the Americans, something constructive with the Americans.
The latest tariff increase affects goods not protected under the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, which Trump negotiated during his first term. This means that while the headline tariff rate appears severe, nearly 90% of Canadian exports to the US can still cross the border duty-free if companies complete the necessary paperwork. The effective tariff rate on Canadian products is estimated to rise only slightly, from about 5% to between 6 and 7%. Behind the public statements, diplomatic efforts are continuing at the highest levels. LeBlanc revealed during his CBS appearance that he expects Prime Minister Mark Carney and President Trump to speak over the next number of days. This anticipated conversation comes after what Trump described as a missed connection on Thursday, when Carney attempted to reach the president, but they never connected. The Canadian minister expressed confidence that meaningful progress remains possible. He also indicated plans for continued engagement with US officials, saying he intends to speak again with Commerce Secretary Lutnick.
That's certainly my plan, again with Secretary Lutnick. Recognizing that we think there is an option of striking a deal that will bring down some of these tariffs, provide greater certainty to investment.
The Trump administration has justified the tariff increases by citing Canada's alleged failure to adequately address immigration concerns and the flow of fentanyl into the United States. Canadian officials have pushed back on these characterizations, with Prime Minister Carney noting in a statement on August 1st.
Canada accounts for only 1% of U.S. fentanyl imports and has been working intensively to further reduce these volumes.
LeBlanc acknowledged the national security concerns driving U.S. policy while arguing for a collaborative approach.
We understand and respect totally the President's view in terms of the national security interest. In fact, we share it. And what we've said to our American counterparts is, how can we structure the right agreement, where we can both continue to supply one another in a reliable, cost-effective way that preserves jobs essential to the American economy, but the same thing is true, obviously, in Canada as well.
The failure to reach an agreement by the self-imposed August 1st deadline has prompted questions about the future direction of US-Canada trade relations. However, several factors may be working in Canada's favour as negotiations continue. The integrated nature of North American supply chains means that tariffs are creating costs on both sides of the border. American automakers, including GM, Ford and Stellantis, have all reported that the 50% tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminium are hurting their profits. Canadian aluminium companies are major suppliers to the US market, and the tariffs have increased prices across multiple sectors. LeBlanc highlighted this interconnection during his CBS interview, noting that
50% of the cars that we finish in Canada and sell to the United States are made up of American parts.
he described this as a perfect example where, instead of tariffing one another, both countries could work together to strengthen their respective manufacturing sectors. Canada has responded to US tariffs with approximately 60 billion Canadian dollars in counter tariffs on various American goods, making it one of only 2 countries, along with China, to directly retaliate against Trump's trade policies. This has generated about 1.5 billion Canadian dollars more in import duties than in the same period last year. Canadian negotiators appear to be taking a long-term view of the situation. As Fen Hampson, a professor of international affairs at Carleton University in Ottawa, told the BBC, officials have concluded that it's not the end of the world if a quick deal isn't reached, and that quality over speed and a rushed agreement matters a lot. The economic data support a patient approach. Canada remains the largest buyer of American goods globally and was the 3rd largest seller of goods to the US last year, according to Census Bureau data. The country purchased some $350 billion worth of American goods and sold $412 billion to the US market in 2024. As both sides prepare for continued negotiations, the fundamental economic relationship remains strong. The challenge now is finding a path forward that addresses American security concerns while preserving the integrated economic partnership that has developed over decades of cooperation.